This is Our People podcast, telling the stories behind South Tyneside and Sunderland NHS Foundation Trust.
Hello, I'm Fiona Thompson. I'm a Communications Officer with South Tyneside and Sunderland NHS Foundation Trust. In this episode, we welcome Amanda, our Antenatal Services Manager, and Caroline of Down Syndrome North East. The idea for this discussion came about because of a project that our organisations have both worked together on, which has seen us take delivery of some gift packs that we give to families, and they've already been handed out previously by the charity, so Caroline will speak about how they've already proved a bit of a hit with people who your charity works with. But Amanda, I don't know whether you can start us off with explaining a little bit about your journey to your role so far and what it involves.
Certainly. So I came into the NHS as a student nurse back in 1987 and worked briefly as a staff nurse, but always had the vision that I wanted to be a midwife. And back then there was no direct entry, so my only role into being a midwife was to do nurse training first. But I quickly went on to train as a midwife in 1991, and then have worked in various hospitals, Durham, Newcastle, and then finally settling within Sunderland. I've worked within the hospital environment and community, and then have progressed up through the ranks, so to speak, and I'm now Antenatal Services Manager.
And what does that touch on? What do you do as part of that job?
So my role is the management of staff, so I have staff management, but also providing that senior management position within the antenatal clinics and the antenatal day services across both South Tyneside and Sunderland hospital environments, supporting women. I'm there as a point of contact. I do run my own clinics as well, so I'm very, very clinical minded within the service.
Brilliant. And Caroline, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to share a little bit about your own background and your career and how you became involved with the charity?
So I have been a primary school teacher and primary Senko for about 25 years, and I left teaching 2 years ago after I had my son Leo. I became involved with Down Syndrome North East, having had Leo 5 years ago in 2016. And first of all, I started taking part. We joined family activities and so on, and made quite a lot of friends and met other families with children with Down syndrome through the charity. And then about 3 years ago, I was asked to join the committee and become a trustee, and I'm now vice chair of the charity, and that's been a really brilliant experience, and it's lovely to know that we're doing lots for families across the North East.
Brilliant. And can you tell us a little bit about the work of the charity?
So we work with families from expectant families right up to adults with Down syndrome right throughout their lives, and we provide a whole range of services and support and activities. The main crux of what we do is around social activities, and so we really like to do things that involve getting families together. So for instance, this weekend some of our adults have been doing an arts and dancing and musical theatre workshops called Blast, which is great fun, and they all have an amazing time. We try to put on lots of events like parties, bowling, theatre trips. We've got a forest school session coming up. For the little ones, we go and hire out venues such as the Tim Lamb Centre in Newcastle. We go to sensory rooms. We just try to do a full range of activities that will be lovely things to do to get families together, and also to help enable future friendships as much as anything. And it's lovely to see, because a lot of our adults members have been together and their families have known each other since they were little children, and it's great to see everybody reunited after COVID as well. So that's the main work of our charity, and we also provide training for parents and carers. So for instance, we run Makaton courses, we provide training around wills and trusts, lots of different things that parents and carers will need, and also we provide peer support for families. So our trustees enable each other to be put in contact with other families who might have, particularly when families have got either a newborn baby or expecting a baby with Down syndrome. So we like to know that we're there as a point of contact to support people.
And I think you also are involved with another charity as well. Do you want to give that a bit of a shout out and
absolutely.
see what that does?
Yeah, so Positive About Down Syndrome is a national charity, and the main focus of the work that I do with Positive About Down Syndrome is around training for NHS staff and providing NHS staff with resources to make sure that when parents have either a high chance result or have a positive result for baby having Down syndrome, then they have sources of information that they can give straight to parents. We have lots of Facebook groups, so we have Facebook groups for mums, midwives, grandparents, dads, and we try to make that the real kind of crux of the hub of what we're doing is that Facebook support group and peer support that we provide, and we're branching out into lots of things like heart stories and heart buddies for parents whose babies might have need heart surgery, breastfeeding support, all kinds of things around having a baby or a toddler with Down syndrome. So yeah, that's a national charity and doing great work. And I'm the maternity coordinator for the North East, so I work with all of the North East hospitals.
Brilliant. And how did you first become involved in Down syndrome North East? And how did it help you through your early times?
So I initially met the chair, Sue, at another group that I went to, and we joined up. We used to go from probably when Leo was quite little, when he was a baby, to family events, and it was lovely because our older son Lucas, who's 11 now, was about 6 at the time, and he made friends with other children who were siblings of other babies with Down syndrome. So it became a really nice little family kind of bond, and you would get to see the same people at different events. So we would go to the Christmas parties and go out and about to different family outings and off to like Water Valley and things like that. So it's always been, ever since Leo was born, it's always been part of our lives, really.
And what were those early experiences like as a new parent of a baby with Down syndrome, and what kind of challenges and unknowns did you come up against that you could never have expected?
I had an antenatal diagnosis, so I found out that Leo had Down syndrome when I was 14 weeks pregnant, and it wasn't the most easy experience for us, I suppose. Like a lot of parents, it was a shock at the time. We quite quickly came to terms with his diagnosis and just then went on to enjoy the rest of the pregnancy, although there's always that feeling in the background that you worry that something might go amiss and he might have arrived early, something like that. He was born at 38 weeks and had quite a few difficulties adapting, and so he was on oxygen for a while. He was in neonatal in our local hospital. So we had quite a lot of challenges in terms of all of the professionals that suddenly are involved. I was completely oblivious to the fact that he was going to have physiotherapy and speech and language therapy involved with us as a newborn baby, and of course neonatal and team and everything. And just as time goes on, you then become quite aware of how much you don't know, and you think at the beginning that you're going to just get on with things like you do, like I did with my other child. And there were lots of real positives. Leo breastfed really easily and he was a really happy and content baby. But at the same time, you suddenly become bombarded with things like disability living allowance and, how do I fill this form in? And, you've got this support service that you can make contact with. And so part of the work of both Positive About Down Syndrome and Down Syndrome North East is to make sure that parents have some help with doing those things, and when those unexpecteds come up, you're not on your own, because I know from talking to a lot of other parents, that feeling that they feel like they're the only one is quite traumatic for some people. And what's been lovely about both the charities that I work with, but particularly with Down Syndrome North East, is I've been able to introduce people who live in, 2 streets away, which has happened here in Sunderland actually, with a couple of families. So it's really lovely when you actually are able to make that happen for people.
I suppose one of the things that you might have come across is other people's reaction to Leo. Has that been a bit of a challenge at the moment? How have you taken that on? Because, and again, you've had the experience of being a mum before that. Has that been an added kind of stress to becoming a parent?
I don't think for me it has particularly, because I know I'm fairly resilient, and also I'm quite good at telling people what I think. So if I do ever get the response from people like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," I had a couple of people when I was pregnant telling me how sorry they were, and I said to them, "There's nothing to be sorry about. We're having a baby. We were really excited and happy about that." And similar things have happened more recently when people have made comments generally around, oh, it's such a shame for them, like as if people with Down syndrome are all one kind of group who are all the same. And so opportunities like that, I actually take it as a real positive, in that I can then go on to educate people and say, well, this is what my son's life is like. It's great. And out comes my phone and I scroll through the photos and show them him swimming and on his trike and whatnot. So I understand, for a lot of families though, it is really challenging, can be really stressful, which is why we do what we do.
Excellent. And Amanda, would you like to give us an insight into how parents might find out they're having a baby with Down syndrome, and what conversations are held around that? Because Caroline's touched on her experiences. Mm-hmm. Do you want to just give us a bit of an insight how it works from your perspective?
Yeah, so certainly all women in pregnancy are offered antenatal screening for Down syndrome, along with other chromosomal abnormalities as well. The very important part of that screening test is the consent process, so that women know what testing they actually are signing up for. The results, as touched on by Caroline, don't come back as a definite diagnosis from that screening test. Women get either a low or a high risk result. The women that get a high risk result then have an opportunity to go on to have diagnostic testing, if that is what they choose to have. Some ladies, will say that they would like to be prepared, so that if they know that they are going to have a baby that will have Down syndrome, they can mentally process that, start to access support groups in the antenatal period. Some ladies just don't want to know at that point and will just go on with their pregnancy knowing they've got a high risk result. On the flip side, however, you have those ladies that do have the testing and they get a low risk result, but that is no guarantee that they're not going to have a baby that has Down syndrome. So sometimes babies are born and are unknown at the point of delivery, whether they have Down syndrome or not. So we do get those ladies through of all ages, young and women in their 30s, who have babies with Down syndrome, and that's not a diagnosis until at birth or after.
And what kind of how are those tests done? What kind of tests are they?
So the antenatal screening is a blood test. The ladies come into the antenatal day unit after having their scan, and we do a very, very simple blood test around 14 weeks of pregnancy, and then that is sent off to the local labs and we get a result. High risk results come back really quite quickly, between 3 and 5 working days. The low risk results are usually given to us between 7 and 10 days.
And so those follow-up tests, what form do they take?
The diagnostic tests, again, we've got a very specific blood test now called NIPT, which is looking very much at DNA markers in blood, and that can be done. Some ladies decide to go down the route of amniocentesis, or placental testing for a definite diagnosis.
And is that a risky procedure? My impression is, from what I've heard and read previously, is there's risks involved in all tests, but do many women go for that? Do they have to weigh up the pros and cons of it?
Yeah. Of the NIPT is a blood test, so there's no risk at all with the NIPT. With amniocentesis and placental sampling, there is a very, very small risk. In all of the years I've been a midwife, I have never known any of our amniocentesis result in miscarriage. So the risk is extremely low. But of course, women do have to weigh up those pros and cons. And if ladies have had miscarriages in the past, pregnancies are very, very precious. So they've got to weigh up,
Yeah. And when you do get these test results back, what kind of conversations do you then have with families around the findings of those tests?
Okay. So we have a screening team linked to the antenatal day services here in Sunderland and South Tyneside. We've got a very, very experienced team that will have those conversations with the pregnant ladies. So the high risk result would be phoned across and emailed across from the reference lab, and Jeanette Johnson, who is our screening lead here, would have a one-to-one conversation with those ladies to relay the results.
Is that in person or on the phone? Because obviously with COVID and things have been done very differently. Yeah. Has that gone back to being face-to-face?
The ladies are offered face-to-face, but the first contact is by telephone. But quite often Jeanette will, she will invite the ladies and their partners through to the hospital, and we'll have the face-to-face conversation regarding ongoing testing and a plan for pregnancy.
What kind of support will be offered to them through the pregnancy, and how does that progress following an arrival?
Okay, so obviously clinical support. So ladies after a diagnosis of having a baby with Down syndrome will have increased surveillance during pregnancy, heart scans of baby, so they'll be linked with all of the clinicians which are going to give that ongoing care. Great support by community midwives, but we would signpost ladies to Down syndrome North East and Positive About Down syndrome. We've got posters and leaflets that we give to ladies so that they can start to build those support groups and networks prior to delivery.
And when a baby is delivered, what are likely to be the additional challenges that families will find themselves facing?
Yeah, so every baby that is born with Down syndrome is different, as in any baby, and there's a whole spectrum of different hurdles that parents would maybe have to go through. Because
all babies are different anyway.
Different, yeah, absolutely. So some babies born with Down syndrome need very little extra care, whereas, as touched on by Caroline, some need extra support with maintaining temperature, extra assistance with latching and breastfeeding. Some babies born with Down syndrome have heart conditions that will need more intensive care by the neonatologists and their team. And quite often we don't know what other medical conditions or medical problems babies are going to have until birth.
Excellent. And part of the reason that this whole conversation came about was because, thanks to the help of your charity, Caroline, you've created these boxes to give to families that come through our maternity services. It's a relatively new thing for our hospitals, and I think it's brilliant. They look fantastic. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us a little bit about where the idea came from, Caroline, and what they feature?
So myself and other members of Down Syndrome North East Committee had talked about how really maternity services were inconsistent across not just the North East but across the country in the support and the provision that parents get right from the point of a high chance result to an after birth diagnosis. And so because some parents leaving hospital in some hospitals with no information at all, what we wanted to do was make the fact that baby was born with Down syndrome into a really positive thing for families, and to show them that they're not on their own, to signpost them to lots of support services, and also to give them some gifts from us with love to celebrate their baby being born. So in the boxes we've been lucky enough to have some terrific volunteers who've made some beautiful things like knitted and crocheted items. I've been working in conjunction with a Project Linus, which is a charity which makes quilts and blankets, ladies who make the most beautiful handmade quilts and blankets, and are often donated to neonatal wards anyway, and so they've given us some beautiful things to put in the boxes. We use also resources from Positive About Down Syndrome. We include a lovely book from an organisation called Wouldn't Change a Thing, which has got pictures and stories about real families' lives. So the whole purpose of that and the PADS book is to really show that actually people with Down syndrome and their families just get on with life, and to show lots of really positive and lovely pictures of families. So we include that. We've got a lovely book from one of our trustees, Eleanor, who is an author, and she's written a book called Ava the Mermaid, which is based on her daughter who also has Down syndrome, but it's a book about inclusion, and it's a book about how actually we're all different. As Amanda said, all babies are different, we're all different, but we can all be included, because in the end the things that make us human are the same in all of us. So that's a lovely book. We put that in, and then we put some little toys and little treats for mums, a little kind of bath bomb and things like that, so that there's a little, it's not all just for babies, but some beautiful knitted things. And yeah, it's a really nice little gift box, and I handwrite a card just to tell the families that they're not on their own, they've got a great support network out there when they're ready to join us, and that baby is going to bring them such a lot of joy and happiness and love in their lives. So we want it to be a really, really positive thing for families. And so far, that's how it seems to have been.
Brilliant. And Amanda, how did this conversation come about between the two of you? How did the link work? Because it's led to us become the first in the region, certainly not the last, to take these boxes. How did that all fall into place?
Yes, I've got close contact with the Maternity Voice Partnership here in Sunderland, and obviously that forum is really valuable for us to know how we can improve our service, you know, getting things straight from the horse's mouth, straight from mums themselves. And Caroline was actually online with one of the meetings, so we made the link through that meeting, and Caroline approached me and said, you know, would I be available to have another chat, and would we use the leaflets in the antenatal area? Of course, I was absolutely delighted, because we're always looking at ways to educate women, offer support where needed. And so this journey's begun, really.
Brilliant. And Caroline, what reaction have the boxes had so far? Because you've already given some out to families and we're just beginning that here. What kind of feedback have you had from people who benefit from them so far?
It's been entirely positive, and it's been lovely, because so far the vast majority of the boxes I've either given face to face when I've met families, which has been really nice, at some of our events, and some of them have gone in the post as well. But I've had some lovely feedback, you know, messages and messages on social media and so on, saying that families felt that it was really great to have some comforting words in the card and some really good sources of information and positive, a really positive gift to start them off on their journey with their baby. So yeah, we're thrilled that it's been really well received, and we're thrilled that we're getting them out into the hospitals now. So I'm really grateful to Sunderland Royal for starting that road for us.
And when the maternity teams, Amanda, have had a look at them, what do they make? What's been their reaction to them?
They're absolutely delighted with them. We can't really get to grips with the value of those items that are in there, and the high quality of the books are amazing. Just the pictures, the stories told by parents, I think it's going to have a huge impact and really help our population. The girls in the neonatal unit obviously saw the boxes that we were given out, and have actually requested some, because some babies don't get the diagnosis until they actually get to the neonatal unit. So they're going to take some boxes. I've got those to deliver today, thanks to Caroline. Yeah.
And Caroline and Amanda, I bet you can both answer. What difference do you think these will make to families?
Well, I think historically all we've had to give is a leaflet. We've had nothing extra to give to these ladies. Yes, you can give telephone numbers for support groups, and like Caroline touched on earlier, these parents go through a turmoil of different emotions, very much so feeling that quite alone, that they are the only person, the only parent that's gone through this process. And I think just to have that box there is just going to be so powerful. So powerful. And
Caroline, I guess you hope it helps families just like you who've been through experiences like you.
Absolutely, because one of the things we don't want is people to have to turn to Google, because if they do that, they see nothing but negativity. And for the charities that I'm involved with, most of us as parents find it quite upsetting, the information or misinformation really that's actually out there on the internet and on social media. And what we want is for parents to have those sources of information that are really good quality sources of information from the gift boxes, and so I think that's the crux of it, is making sure that parents know that they're not alone, that there's a community out there, there's lots of support, and that they get the right quality information.
And if there's somebody listening to this episode, where would you point them in the right direction to find out a little bit more, to give them the set them up on the right path to get the right information?
Obviously, from the point of view of the charity that I work for, Positive About Down Syndrome has fantastic support and fantastic resources available online, and so I would definitely say go in that direction. The Down Syndrome Association also is a national charity that people can look to as well. And every part of the country has a local organisation, a local support group. So I would definitely advise people to look to their local organisations for support of all different kinds.
And Amanda, I don't know whether you would just want to touch on what kind of reassurances your team will offer families who are going through this testing process and this unknown time. What reassurances that you have to there is somebody there for them here within our hospitals?
Yeah, absolutely, 24/7. During pregnancy, women can get in touch with the midwives on delivery suite, out of hours overnight. I'm always around Monday to Friday as antenatal services manager, as are the other midwives on the antenatal day units and clinics. Community midwife, again, a huge source of support for pregnant ladies. And then ongoing, and after the episode of midwifery care, GP, health visitor, school nurse, and obviously Down Syndrome North East and PADS.
That's great to know. Thank you so much both for joining us. Really grateful.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of our People podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and check out our other stories. Hit subscribe to keep up with the latest and catch up with what we've been up to on our Twitter, Facebook and Instagram pages. Just search for our name.